Welcome to Podcast, the Business of Dentistry podcast, brought to you by Practice Plan. Podcast delivers the best business advice, real-life stories, and practical hints and tips to make your practice a more profitable and sustainable business. And now, here's your host.
Hello and welcome to Podcast. My name's Hazel Dockery, and with me today is Fiona Elwood, who is the Executive Director of the Society of British Dental Nurses. Not brittle ones, British dental nurses. I'm stumbling, I'm afraid. However, I'm sure Fiona won't stumble over things. It's really nice to speak to you again, Fiona. Thank you for giving us your time. And what we hope you're going to be talking about today is it's based on a presentation that you delivered at Dentistry Show London at the Excel Centre. And it's psychological safety and high performance teams. So before we go into that, you're an extremely busy person. I do not know how you fit it all in, but also for me, you're the very definition of someone who started as a dental nurse and has not allowed that definition to restrict her in any way, because you've also shown that there are many career paths for dental nurses. So just give us a quick overview of who you are and what you've been doing.
Gosh, quick would be interesting, wouldn't it? And you're right, I've never lost that. I am a dental nurse. I still am heavily involved in dental nursing, and whether it is some clinical work or whether it's academic work. I think once a dental nurse, always a dental nurse, but I could have moved out of dental nursing, and I chose not to. For the love of the profession. And I've always said, as you rightly picked up on, is that there are opportunities. I think the difference is that they're not obvious, and there are so many. And I think that people don't know all the different paths that you can take. And by remaining a dental nurse, it has created and given me the opportunity to do all the wonderful things that I've been able to bring back into dentistry, to be able to expand things, and things like, for example, human factors, the mentorship, the leadership, the coaching, all of the things that really bring merit to our profession. And yes, I've been able to share it with other members of the dental team, but my heart lives and will always live in dental nursing, because that's who I am, it's who I wanted to be, and that's where I'll be for the rest of my days in dentistry. So thank you for the invitation.
Oh, no, thank you for accepting. And also, I mean, you mentioned that you're doing, you do quite a lot of academic work. You also, we were chatting beforehand and you told me that you were advising the government as well on various things as well. So it does show that, dental nursing is and can be taken seriously, given the right channels.
Absolutely, and we do get invitations, as do other groups, to present in some of the government groups and the MP groups and everything else. And I think dental nursing is it's a huge field. There are huge opportunities. We do just need to keep knocking at doors and reminding them that we're here and that we can do so much more, and we can be of greater benefit to patient outcomes and can take up some different roles. We tend to work within the narrative that's been given to us all of our lives. What is the expectation? Or perhaps there isn't an expectation of us. And that's the problem. Do we sit back and accept that? Or do we get off those chairs and, show them what we're capable of doing? And I'm afraid I'm probably the latter. Is that, I don't take no for an answer easily.
Yeah.
I always look at, well, how, what else could we do to try and get around this? So that's just been me in my life. But I'm not the only one, and I'm grateful to see that there's some great people coming up behind us, which is fabulous.
This is brilliant, yes. So your presentation, Psychological Safety and High Performance Teams, what were you trying to achieve with this presentation then?
So this is part of a mindset shift, really, that I want to bring to the profession around the human factors work that I've looked at. And psychological safety is very much around being and feeling safe. And I work very closely with a lot of colleagues in this arena. And there's a particular lady, there are many people that I've worked with in human factors and psychological safety, but there's a wonderful lady called Suzette Woodward, and people may or may not have heard of her and her books. And the thing that's key to me with psychological safety as part of human factors is that if we want our teams to perform well and be the best they can be and do the best they can do for their patients and their clinical colleagues that they're working with, or indeed autonomously, we need them to feel psychologically safe. Now, it crosses over into mental health and to mentorship and everything else. But what I wanted to do is to try and change the mindset, is that there's always been a belief that we need to put patients' interests first. And this isn't controversial. It's actually fact that if our teams can feel safe, feel able to work in the best place that they can, have the right time for their patients, have the tools and the materials, and have the capacity to work best and well, not be tired, not be exhausted, not feel stressed, then our patients are potentially going to be far more safer. So why do we not put our teams first in order that patients are safer? And of course, there's the other element of there's no place for blame. It's another presentation. I don't think we've touched on that one yet, but there is no place for blame in dentistry. We need to have a systems approach on how and why people make decisions that they make at that time. What was it made them feel that was the right thing to do? Was it other things happening in the clinical area, in the practices, in our home lives? So psychological safety spans across everything that we do, but we don't touch on it in dentistry. So human factors needs to be stronger within dentistry.
What do we actually mean by psychological safety? I mean, if you had to give it a sort of like a pithy definition, how would you
Psychological
define it?
safety is it's really, really interesting to look at what psychological safety is, and it does cut across different fields, as I've already said. But psychological safety is feeling safe to do things and to speak. So if I touch on the four key areas really within psychological safety, we talk about inclusion safety, and I'll come back to each one. We talk about learner safety, contributory safety, and challenge safety. And for me, each and every one of these fold back into everyday life of dentistry, let alone the strategies and the strap lines behind all of these things. So if we look at inclusion safety, it's about members feel safe to belong to teams. It's about feeling safe to belong to a team, about being comfortable in a team, not feeling excluded, and feel like they're wanted and they're appreciated. So that's very much about inclusion safety.
Yeah.
When we look at learner safety, it's about people feeling safe to learn, about not being afraid to ask questions, about being able to try things out and experiment. And, even when, we admit we've made a mistake and ask for help, we should feel safe to do all of those things. But too frequently we don't feel safe, and especially as a beginner. And I don't mean as a student in terms of primary qualification. It could be that we have taken primary qualification, but we've moved our workspace to a new environment. That could be difficult. Or we're learning a new skill that we haven't used before, or there's new materials there, or there's a new policy come in. We need to feel safe to learn in any guise. And then in contributory safety, that's about feeling safe to contribute, to not be shamed, to not feel embarrassed, to not be really ridiculed, and so that you feel able to volunteer your thoughts to contribute to conversations or plans or projects. And then finally, challenge your safety. This is a really difficult one that people struggle with, and I think this is sometimes to do with cultures and the power dynamics and the hierarchy in the workspace. But ultimately, this is about people being able to question others who are in authority, or feel that they are superior, or that there's power dynamics here. But we can challenge respectfully, that we can make suggestions that might challenge thinking, because it might be a really good challenge. It might actually help us do what we're doing, really. So, that's what we really mean about being psychologically safe. It's that climate of safety that's really, really important. You know, I'm sure that we've all been, anybody who's listening, we've all been in a situation where we're feeling cautious, wary, apprehensive when we're doing something for the first time. And if your culture in the workplace brings safety and you feel inclusive and welcomed and belong and able to have conversations that may be challenging, this all changes the dynamics of feeling safe. But if I might add, the challenge of safety, as I said, it's most difficult. It's only most difficult if you don't know how to have a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
So there are ways of saying things and doing things.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you do it assertive, aggressively, not questionably, not respectful, yes, it might not land the way you intended it to. And I'm sure we've all been in that place as well over time.
Yeah.
So that's what psychological safety looks like, really.
So how do you go about achieving that kind of a climate, really?
It is about being open around psychological safety and having these perhaps team discussions of what it means. You know, we want people to be able to share ideas, ask questions, give and receive feedback, to admit mistakes and to ask for help without repercussion. So teamwork is fabulous. The huddles in the mornings, the end of day, you know, sort of coming down before we go home from work, that we leave our troubles behind, finding mediums within the working space of if things are not okay, do you have somebody you can go to? Is there a suggestion box? Is there a help point? All of these things, it's about looking inwards to look at how we can be different or how we can be better. And it starts with those very early conversations and being open and having somewhere to go.
Yeah.
In some practices and some clinics, they don't find it difficult. In others, it's more difficult. So maybe we need to appoint somebody who's a champion of psychological safety who can embrace this and work with it.
Does it not come from the top though? You know, that kind of it doesn't, you know, isn't the sort of like the practice owner or the practice manager the person who sets the culture, really, generally?
Yeah, generally, I'm a big believer in bottom up, top down, middle out. You know, that it's my big saying. I love that saying. And there's another saying that I love, which is another one of human factors. And very much is work is imagined and work is done. So people who set policies and set strategies very rarely bring the people on the ground on board until it's too late. Things are usually set in stone. So it's great to, instead of designing a policy and say, have a look at this and alter it, people don't feel they can. It's great to get everybody around the table and say, this is what we're doing next. Does anybody want to contribute, or is anybody willing to dip in and dip out? Being open, that sort of almost open door way of thinking, really. But you do need to be really, really alert about low psychological safety.
Yeah, I mean, what are the possible consequences of low psychological safety then?
Well, other than complete disruption and disarray and chaos in your workspace, there are
So
other
nothing too bad
things.
then, really.
Exactly. There are other things, including patient impact, but also turnover of staff, you know, maintaining your staff, actually employing new staff, attracting new people to the business. It's really important that we recognize it. And you know, low psychological shows itself in fear, you know, in mistrust, in apprehension, concerns, and they're quite guarded in you know what their willingness to contribute and to give and to participate in things if they've got low psychological safety. So it is quite destructive to
Mm.
team working, and that's the last thing that we truly, truly need.
Is it often that you'll get just one individual who doesn't feel psychologically safe, or is it something that's usually a bit more pervasive than that? You know, it spreads across the whole team.
It can be both.
Mm.
It's almost easier to manage if it's one person, as
Mm.
long as it's seen and it's sort of a support network that's put around that. It can spread very, very quickly depending on what it is that's causing that. And then therefore you've got a bigger issue to deal with, because then you've got different characteristics, different people who perceive things differently. You've got different levels of emotional intelligence in there. there's all kinds of things. And I think, if we go back to the furthest point of, what if you take bullying and things like that,
Yeah.
it's how it's received. It's that the recipient, it might not have been intended that way.
Mm.
So things can turn very, very quickly, and this is why psychological safety is really, really important. And it isn't just the dental care professionals, as people like to brand us under that one umbrella term that very few of us like, but um, dentists, specialists as well, practice managers, practice receptionists, administrators. It implicates the whole team, and it can cut across the whole team.
Yeah, I mean, we've been quite negative about things so far. So we've talked about the negative sides of not having psychological safety. So what are the actual benefits then? How does it do us good?
Oh gosh, it does us so much good. We can get up in the morning and love to go to work, be
Mm,
enthusiastic about going to work, whatever we're going to do. It encourages people to speak up and to have conversations that perhaps we wouldn't if we had psychological safety. It
mm,
mitigates failure and unintended errors. All of those things that we worry about.
mm.
Some people would perhaps say regulation, and they worry about the regulators. I don't tend to bring that too much into here because I think that's for a different space. But we can be supportive, we can be productive. If there's conflict, we can, talk it out and work it out very quickly. It promotes creativity and innovation. It increases operational excellence. It increases accountability and ownership. And better than all of that, it gives you ownership of who you are, and every day seems wonderful. It's
Mm.
just it is a positive thing. And I guess we start with the negative first, simply because we want to show the impact and then the greatness that can come from having psychological safety.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not just about. I can see that you're, trying to say it's not just about being nice. What is it then?
Yeah, it goes beyond about being nice or a personality factor or any other word for trust about lowering performance standards. It's not any of those things. It is about recognizing there needs to be this space to feel safe. And it is
Mm.
about creating this safe space. So, you can be as nice as possible, but if you haven't created a space for somebody to be able to feel safe and to speak freely in a confident way, then you can be as nice as possible, but it won't work. And it isn't about people having different personalities, because no matter what their personality is, they still need to feel safe to speak.
Yeah.
They need to feel safe to go to work, and etc. etc. So, I think let's not get wrapped up in what it's not, and really think about what it is. And it goes back to the early commentary of feeling included, feeling safe to learn, feeling that you can contribute, and feeling that you can challenge quite safely.
I mean, there's no question that it is beneficial to everybody for there to be psychological, a culture, an
Mm.
attitude of psychological safety. So why do we struggle so much to achieve that?
I think because we don't look inwards at it. I don't think it's something that we have brought to dentistry. I don't think we look at it in this way. If you talk to some of the people who are interested in psychology, they may consider this. We're just not good at it. It is a fairly new dimension coming into dentistry. There are many people who would say, well, yeah, we know what that is, and it belongs to other fields, but actually it's not true. It's a really good fit in dentistry. It works and is applied across health sectors. So
Mm.
whilst people would like to say it sits in aviation, actually, if you understood human factors and psychological safety, it sits across the gas industry, the railways, so it sits in divers, it sits in medicine, it sits in nursing forever and ever. And there is a cardiologist or cardiothoracic surgeon who couldn't get a particular role he was after, and there was no space for him. So it became a pilot. And
Right.
it's really good when people stand up say, oh, it's okay for you, you're a pilot, but it's not transferable. And he stops everybody in their tracks because he was a cardiothoracic surgeon and he can transport it into both worlds. So, it is slowly creeping into dentistry. For me, not quick enough because it's such a powerful tool, and it's just a different way of behaving. And I think the other thing that's interesting for us, if we don't adopt this, and it comes to my mentorship work and my mental health work, is we have such a throughput of so many of our staff members.
Yeah.
If we don't get this right, then we'll continue to have throughput.
Yeah.
We absolutely will. And you don't have to look far beyond social media to see the discontent.
Yeah.
And you wish those conversations hadn't got to the place they've got to on social media. Then keyboard warriors get onto these things. And, there's some dreadful things said on social media, and it should never get to that place.
No, and also it does nothing for the reputation of the profession as a whole, does it? Dentistry and
No.
Yeah.
And especially now, we're sort of really in the spotlight, aren't we? Because people can't get appointments, and we're feeling the backlash of the pandemic still, and we'll probably feel it for quite some time to come. So, we need to look at what else we can do. And I'm very much part of a great research group, Mindset UK, and there are papers coming out and being published in the BDJ at the moment, and it talks about the way people are feeling, and all of this is contributory in there. It's so important that we listen and really listen to what people are saying, and take it on board, because so many people don't feel safe.
Which is very sad to hear, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really sad to hear that, there's this element of it's that guardedness that I spoke about earlier. People are guarded in what they say for fear of all kinds of things, depending what their subject is. And I think there are some professional groups who don't feel that they have a voice, or if they have a voice, that they're not listened to, or if they're listened to, they're not heard, because they don't see the actions. And this is a problem with not getting hold of this psychological safety space, really, is that, those who shout the loudest get heard, and they're not necessarily the right person to be making opinions.
So, I mean, this is a bit of a Debbie Downer conversation. So, can we lighten the mood in any way? And other ways that people can make improvements to the culture?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, it's about having a glass half full in life, not having a glass half empty, really. And I think, psychological safety brings so much opportunity. It can bring trust. It can bring, a great character. It can bring people out of their shell. It can encourage people to explore things. It can make people more creative. It can really expand our team working, and beyond teamwork, in that collaboration in broader meetings too. So I think, we need to get hold of it. There's no getting away from it, but it can create happy spaces, creative spaces. We always talk about the wild and wacky when we do sort of thought showers, and part of that is making people safe to actually be wild and wacky. Those last minute ideas, and you think you've done a thought shower and you think you've got everything out there, and you think, go on, just have another go. Just what else in the wildest, wackiest of worlds, if there was no barriers, what would you like to put on that list? So I think it just builds on the ability to draw out skills of people, to encourage them to look at other things, to have greater communication, to meet great people. And that's the thing, is if you become safe in self, then it gives you the courage to do things that you perhaps wouldn't do before. Establishing your own psychological safety, for me, is like taking 2 or 3 golden steps, because you see people flourish if they've got an own psychological safety. So flourishing is, I'm really key on looking at psychological safety so that people flourish and get excited about their days.
Yes.
It's really easy to be negative, isn't it? So much easier to be negative.
And that's possibly why we're in that situation. I suppose that it takes a little bit more effort to think and set up these safe systems. really.
Yeah, and it's got to come, like you say, not just top down, bottom up, middle out, which is
Oh, Fiona, we lost you. Hello? Hello?
so it makes.
Oh, you were
Hello, sorry,
freezing.
I lost the contact. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
back. I made, yeah. So I was just saying, I know you probably cut it there. So
yeah,
it just makes a whole different way of being. But for me, it has to come beyond top down, middle, bottom up, middle out. Ultimately, we have to have a team buy-in. It has to be a team approach, because 2 or 3 people who've mastered this, have got hold of this, will be fine on their own. But if everybody's new to it, but if the whole team don't buy into it, then it's a really difficult phenomenon to get on board. And to sort of work with. So that's why I think it's worth investing in a team discussion, a team webinar, whether it's lunch and learns, whether it's somebody delivering bits. I love doing things like flipped classrooms, and now you're going to ask me what a flipped classroom is, don't you?
yeah.
But sending people away to go and look at it, to do their own little bit of research, so they feel that they've got something to give, and they contribute to a group discussion and say what they've found, and everybody can discuss it. Really, I think that that's really important. So it's really well, and it's it's that investment in time, investment in people,
Yeah.
that really shines through from doing it collaboratively and getting an understanding of it collaboratively.
And you mentioned about champions earlier.
Yeah, I did. I think that it's really important that we have those champions, and it may be that people have a mental health and wellbeing champion within the workspace, or whatever they call them and frame them, depending on what their ethos is at the practice. But these champions will understand psychological safety, who'll watch out for and hopefully pick up on any low psychological safety within the team, and sort of try and put mechanisms in place to try and do that. But anybody who's a great champion of any of this will have great listening skills. They will be inviting and make sure that people are involved in things. They will encourage learning. And, if mistakes happen, we're human. And we do have to understand this. Unintended errors is what I prefer to call them, because we didn't intend to make a mistake. We didn't intend to hurt anybody or drop anything or break anything. It was unintended, and we have to learn to manage that better with a positive outlook too. We want to include everybody, so that's what they'll be doing and drawing them together. That champion will be empathetic and sympathetic, and encouraging an inquiring mind. There's some great tools. I'm a big believer in, there's NHS Scotland have got some tools that they're talking cards that encourage people to talk if we're not really good at talking, if we find it hard to talk about some of the challenges. But the fact is here that it is a really easy philosophy to adopt, and it's when you work together, it's something that can be really fruitful to any team, and can give it positivity and accessibility to a whole new world. It can stop holding people back. If we've got psychological safety, a lot of people feel that they're held back, and if we have this, I just don't know how people can be held back.
We could talk about this all afternoon, because there's an awful lot more into it, but I'm afraid we're coming towards the end. I really appreciate your time, Fiona. Thank you so much for coming and explaining that. And I'm sure that if anybody's interested, they can go onto the NHS Scotland website and find those talking cards as well. But yeah, thank you very much for your time, Fiona.
You're very welcome.